It's called Cleave, and it's a long poem sequence, and I'm only going to read a few of them. I'll spare you that. It's antiphon. It's in 2 voices. Each piece is in 2 voices. Came out of a project I was working on with someone, thinking through issues around corporeal mercy. And so there are 2 voices here. One could be considered the voice of lamentations, and one could be considered the voice of mercy, or not. It starts with a quote. The prophet said to Jibril, "What is Mikael in charge of?" He replied, "The plants and the rain." Attend the rain. The fennel and the dots wait for it. I do. The cement waits for it, and when it comes, hot and aching to the gutter, a summer squats down, knees the legs open. Late afternoon becomes a midnight, any midnight. To hydrant, the open vein against the concrete radiant, hollers of light, to wash. Shelter, us. The seed tucked between the scapula, the rhizome, and the hard dirt call asylum, call your corrugated roof and what sounds its tin. To pigeon, the pulse wrapped in linen, limb-tied and hauled far enough. 3 wings beat this distance, feather at it, the concealed, across field, across tenements, to return. That the house is boarded up against what taps the pines, against the 3 p.m. heat and my burnt mouth. That there are needs that do not scab, that I cannot. To needle. Not the eye as litmus test, but the stitch, the piercing and the joins, hinged to mend. Are you red beads on thread to be worn against sloth? Lania twisting against the collarbone, sign against the eye thrown out to catch a coria moth and drag it back from its dive. To trellis, to scaffold wrists with the demands of kite string, to tether. Our mouths palm to palm on the dictionary page, lips stuck wonder at the particular. It's not your voice that is the surprise, but mine. To script, hands full of marbles glittering plunged under salt water to roll them like dice or apricots or yeast, to sort. Jar of the world. Our calls bounce back and arrive with you attached to their tails, to these tin can conversations, salt singing at Malleus. To apple, the teeth on it, the cut skin, the sweet company, to taste. Take the late noon sun to the narrow alley, to the fist that comes out of nowhere and the jaw that snaps. Without your mouth to let loose, what are we? This skin makes us sacks, take us over your shoulders. To hallway. Single bulb lit permission to go there or come here, to pause at thresholds and keyholes, a night full of cup to wall, ear to cup, a studied nonchalance, to hall. I'm dreaming knives and weeping for the tension between hips and hands, the ache of too long and maybe never, and please do something. To mercy, to hold off, to hold the reins, to hold back, to hold on, to hold. The wide barren, with tansy beetles that crawl towards anything, camphor or rosemary, with our call for cover that breaks from the sacrum, from the bone. To tundra, what dreams crowberry and lichen sides up against what melts, what slurs let go, what blooms marsh and flatfish and mud, what whistles hard enough to knock you down, to thaw. Eyes forced open underwater, and light is paint trails off brushes and the fresh rinse jar. Mouthed air, pockets. Is the kelp you're charged to? To conjunction. It isn't either or, but always, but both and. It's the sweet spot between forefinger and thumb offered, the lemon and salt on the lover's tongue, to forgive. Walk us into the monsoon, the flash. I will empty my pockets over a land not usually submerged. Relinquish renunciation for your lead. To harmonica, the heart's plenty. Fungi networks for miles, for centuries. Beneath the peat of the ordinary word, a reed intones inundation to praise. Be marrow, surface of skin. Adhere your rogue chromosome, the burnt honey, the hum of your everything. To shoelace, within earshot and reach, within whisper, to attend. And I'm going to read a couple from this.
What's that?
This is the book. It's called Bends Elsewhere. It's also a lot of poem sequences, so I'm going to read a couple of the sort of solo shorter poems. This is called Six Harmonies. It's based on a principle of movement in Tai Chi that says the ankle and wrist move at the same time, the knee and elbow move at the same time, and the shoulder and hip move at the same time. Six harmonies. Ankle and wrist. Rays twisting through eelgrass latched intervals, angle of wish and flash of herring gull's wing maybe. It catches your eye first, though it is final flourish, waves slapped out on sand, not the crest, not the tide. Knee and elbow. Needs socket. The joint allows. Arrowing, sparrow's shrug, whip uncoiled before the snap. Shoulder and hip. You move from here. The empty and swell, moans unhatched. We forced the cross at the highest narrow pass, the curves coming colder, the slip of the station into static. We sped just front of our edge, headlights anchoring us to sea level, unspun. Awkward turns of phrase, spiraled cat calls from here, hold her and flip the blame to these transitional wares. Tango, skip, kick, drop, spoon, borrowed room, motel, back seat, this tangle of sheets, my shoulder, her hip. The last one I'm going to read is a poem sequence, but a short one. It's called A Cupboard Full of Other People's Ginger Jars, San Francisco, 1993. Sophia. It was empty. The smartest kid in kindergarten is crying over zero. Something that means nothing. The teacher tries a marker, a placeholder. But at home, where there was someone, there is no one. No sign figures that. 20 years later, she knows a lot of dead people. Grammar rendering what zero couldn't. Threshold of hearing, water's freezing point, first patient of the hypothesis, center of the chemical galaxy. He can't remember who is dead or not. He remembers when he first realized he could forget. He was 5. In a station wagon crossing the desert, he was counting birds and telephone poles, how many between arrival and departure, and suddenly remembered he'd forgotten what he'd tasted for breakfast. Quantity and order had cost him oranges and toast. The positional notation. Making room in the cupboard, scrubbing the stained contact paper inherited from previous tenants, who must have cared for blue, or else why the checks and roses. The counters cluttered with what has been removed and must be put back. The geometry of rupture, jars collect. The dead's tea kettle, cookbook, whistle, something to hold, not a place, but in the hand.